Hi, welcome back to Fall CS170. So we're working on Excel. So we're picking up from the other Excel lectures. So before we were looking at VLOOKUPs. Now we're going to step into one of the many functions that I mentioned for the Excel lectures. So this is PMT functions. Very common thing if you end up looking at things in terms of either you having to, let's say, pay off a loan or something like that, or you getting some sort of regular distribution or payout from an investment, let's say, dividends or interest payments and whatnot. So this very basic function, very common type of thing for finance and whatnot. So it's essentially one of the standard functions that's been in Excel for a long time. So again, similar to the VLOOKUP, what you see here is basically like, the very publicly available standard documentation that comes with it and kind of tries to go through each of the variables that feeds into it. And then, out comes whatever answer that you want to get, whether you want to figure out like what is your monthly payments going to be on your mortgage, let's say, or your car or whatever, as one type of thing, right? The other thing could also be just like do a present value calculation about something, right? So you have something that you're expecting 30 years from now or 20 years from now or whatever, based on whatever interest rate you want to apply. You can say, well, what is that present value of something? And likewise, you can also talk about what is the future value of something, okay? So here's like an example of it doing some calculation, right, in this PMT function, okay? So basically, it kind of adds a little bit into it, but it doesn't take away from the calculation, which is basically looking at your payments for a car, right? I mean, it kind of mixes in this like trade-in value and stuff like that. So let's not pay too much attention to the columns A and B. They're just kind of extra dimensions to it, and take a look at more on the right-hand side with the Excel formula. So I'm just gonna type this in the way it is on the PowerPoint. So 10% interest rate. And we have 30 as the loan term. So it doesn't really tell you what units we're talking about, but essentially we're talking about months here. And that's something you need to pay attention to, right? Because you need to make sure whatever units you are talking about for the payments, that the interest rate is in line with that, okay? And then, okay, you don't have to worry about like all of this calculations they did to calculate the principal. All you care is the principal, right? So we're just saying it's 16,000, and then that's the principal. Okay, so these are your basic things, right? When you want to borrow money for something, whatever it is, right? You're going to say, well, what's your interest rate, your gain charge? How many payments are you going to be making? And then what is the amount of money you're actually going to borrow? So let's do the equals again, and then PMT, and you can see PMT comes in. But notice as part of this PMT, you can see these other PMTs here. They're basically all kind of related to each other. And you basically are working out like different dimensions, right? Like I said, if you want to kind of work out like, based on what your budget's going to be and what you want your payments to be, what kind of interest rate can you afford? Something like that. But we can step into that later. Let's say just look at the basic PMT function. Okay, so you can say, well, okay, here's the rate. Now, remember what I said, you have to talk in terms of the units that we're talking about. When we talk about the payments, in this case, I don't think anyone's ever heard of like a 30-year car loan, right? So you're really taking this to mean the months that you're paying. So if you're talking about in terms of months, that means the rate also has to be a month. When I say 10% interest rate, again, it doesn't really say it, but I think from some relative common sense, you would look at that as an annual rate, so 10% a year. So that's why they take this value. I know it's different from what the PowerPoint is showing, but it's the cell, right? It's the cell reference there. And then they're taking it divided by 12. That makes it a monthly reference. So now your interest rate and your payments are aligned in terms of the units, right? So you're just getting the units to line up. All right, so number of periods. Well, as we said before, it's 30, but I'm just gonna click on 30 here, okay? So that's the number of periods. Again, it's not really explicit. You kind of have to know that we're talking about months here, and that's why we divided the interest rate by 12 in the first place, okay? And so present value means how much money are you borrowing right now, your principal that you're borrowing right now. So it's in current terms, right? So that's the 16,000 here, right? So let's click on that. All right. So that covers you on D3 and D4. And then I can close it off. Okay. And so this comes out to be a negative, meaning it's from your perspective. You're borrowing the money and therefore you're paying out on each payment to be $604.98. Okay. Which is essentially what your PowerPoint here is saying, right? All right, so it's showing as a negative, meaning like from your perspective, your point of view, it's money going out the door. That's why it's negative. So hopefully that makes sense to you. And so that's just a quick review. You can play around with this PMT function and put in like, I don't know, if you have student loan or you have like a car loan, or maybe you have a mortgage on a house, whatever. You can punch that in pretty easily. It will come up with your mortgage payment. Like I said, there's other functions that if you type in that PMT, Excel will pull it up to basically calculate different parts of this, right? So let's say you know what your monthly payments are and you're trying to figure out or I should say before, like, you know what monthly payments you would like to pay, and then translate that to what is the highest interest rate you could afford to pay based on, let's say I want to borrow $20,000 or something like that. Right, so you got this here. Type that in, IPMT. Okay. So this is your interest payment here. Okay. So let's say I'm doing like a mortgage, like for a mortgage, you have your part of your payment is going for your principal, and then part of your payment is going for your interest, right? So this will kind of help you to figure that out. So there's a PPMT also, PPMT, right? And then this returns the principal part of the payment. So you can kind of split up your payment into your interest payment and your principal payment. Okay. All right. So let's just continue on. Let's hit some of these charts. I kind of hit on like some of these charts. I think like maybe the first lecture or second lecture for Excel. So like I kind of said before, you can put in whatever values, right? And then you can hit recommended charts, right? Let me just do it right now because it's probably something you want to make sure you know for your exam, I mean, not your exam, your assignment, but certainly for your exam too. Let me see here. I'm trying to think of what I can put in here. I don't know. Let's do census. Let's say A, B, C, 2000, 2500. Okay, so I think I might have mentioned it during the lectures. One thing you want to kind of be cognizant of or pay attention to when you do these charts, you have to look at data. How many cities are there? When it gets to be too many, it gets a bit difficult to represent in certain types of visualization. And when you look at these numbers, what's the range of these numbers? If the range becomes too wide, your charts become like kind of all screwed up. Like maybe there'll be one number that dominates everything else, let's say, like a big outlier or something like that. But let's do this. I'm here, and let's see what it recommends here. And then I'm going to do recommended charts. And it'll look like a clustered column, right? Which seems fair enough. Okay, so let's go with this one. Right, so now we have the census and we have like 1, 2, 3. Well, I mean, what is 1, 2, 3? I really want to have city A, B, and C. But let's quickly just muck around with the title here for a second. Census or something, right? So this is your chart title. Again, something you're going to need to know how to do. And then let's go to select data. I just did a right mouse there. And you can see these, it's just 1, 2, 3. That doesn't really mean anything, right? So actually I want to go here and say, what is the range for that? Well, I want these cities here. So I'm going to select A, B, C like that. And you can see it pops up here. Okay. Now let's say I want to change the style, right? Then I have these different styles here. Style 8. Let me see here. I guess not too many columns, so maybe this is pretty good. I like kind of how you have the number right inside the bar for that city. So you have a 10-year census, you have your city ABC, and then you have this, right? So what I just did here, make sure you understand what I just did, because you are going to be doing this for your assignment, okay? Let me see here. So this just kind of on paper kind of shows what I just did on the Excel. So basically you're selecting, right? I only selected the one column, but in this case, they kind of selected for multiple, right? So they did something where it's April, May, June. So let's say for my example, if I had done like census for whatever year, and then another year plus 10, and another year plus 10, like I have 3 columns, then I would have selected like this, and then you would have basically, instead of just this one bar for each of the cities, you would have 3 bars, right? So like, let's say this is year 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so years 1, 2, and 3, the cities. So you have your city A, B, C, and then you would have like 3 bars for each of them across those years, right? Which is what this is showing, really. April, May, June as your 3 columns. So that's what is highlighted here, right? And then they also highlighted like the categories. I happen to do it separately. It's good for you to know how to do that, because what happens if let's say for the sake of argument, I had some numbers here and numbers here, and I just wanted to do, I thought, oh, that's too many bars that I want to do. So I'm just going to cover these 2, and I'm going to skip over this one, right? So what I would do is I would just select this, do this, and then I would add this in later with the range select. So I figured that kind of gives me a little bit more flexibility, but this is another way to do it where you have the 3 different periods and then you get like all of the different category, in this case, basic home gym, deluxe home gym, multifunctional trainer, elite home gym, right? Of course, when you do the recommended charts, it'll recommend the clustered bar chart, okay? So this is more of the same where it just kind of highlights it. And here kind of shows the totals here. There's like some trending here, I guess. Nothing that we're gonna do anything about here. Well, in this case, I guess they're showing lines here for the trends. In this case, 1, 2, and 3, April, May, and June. Okay, the total here is just basically your total across these right here, right? So that would be your sum, and you will put that in here. Okay. Well, there's only a little bit more left here, so let me quickly do what a series fill means. Right, series fill is almost like if you have a couple of different things in Excel, one right after the other, there are some times or some cases where Excel is smart enough to be able to figure out what you're going to do if you extend it, okay? Well, so here they talk about days of week, they talk about dates, they talk about times, okay? And basically they talk about like, adjacent cells and whatnot, right? And so they give you an example here, how it kind of, when you extend it, right? And they're talking about this bottom right-hand corner and you drag it down. So I'm going to demonstrate that for you. Okay, so I'm here. Let's see, Sunday, Tuesday, let's say. Okay, so you have this. I don't know if you can really see it unless the HD version here, but you can see what happened, right? I went like this and you can see it became a plus sign when I came to the bottom right-hand side here. And then I dragged it down like that. And then you get that, right? So it knows to kind of extend it out like so. Okay, let's see what happens if I do some numbers. Then here it became a plus sign, then I drag it down and you can see it kind of just extends it out, right? It kind of figures out what the series you're probably trying to do is, okay? Another quick thing, I don't know if you really see it, but I'm gonna highlight it. It's not on the PowerPoint or anything, but you might have noticed this if you play around Excel. Look at what happens when I highlight these numbers, right? So before we were playing around with some different functions and it came up with different things, but Excel has some stuff here at the bottom that you can see some useful information, right? So I highlighted these numbers here. This is telling you the average, this is telling you a count, and this is telling you a sum, okay? So there's a couple of different things here that you might want to play around with. It's just like quick things. When you get to like playing around with large sheets, there's a whole bunch of numbers and things like that. So these are quick little shortcut things to help you move around quickly with Excel, right? Whether it's like copy pasting stuff, inserting chunks of stuff, filling in ranges, highlighting things and quickly seeing what the sum is without me having to do a sum, right? I mean, of course, I can do this, right? I can do a sum, right? Like that. And then I can just highlight it. And then I have that, right? Or I could have just done this and then I get the same thing, okay? So these are quick, like little shortcuts, right? So if you get to use Excel a lot, you'll see a number of these little quick hints or whatnot. The scope of this class obviously is just to show you some basic stuff, but really Excel has like a lot of different little things like this packed in, whether it's built-in functions, whether it's the charting capabilities, there's more data analysis that we'll cover. There's what if scenarios that we'll cover. Some of it will be picked up in your recitation project. So there's really a lot of functionality that's packed into Excel. That's why Excel and spreadsheets like it have been so useful and used so often within business, essentially any business, from small business to large corporations that do a lot of financial analysis, inventory tracking, whatever, right? Like everyone does all kinds of stuff within Excel. And there's just like, it's chock full of different things that make your life easier. Okay. So anyway, I think this will be a little bit longer lecture than some of the other ones, but hopefully you got some pretty good useful information out of this. All right, thank you.